This Week in Richmond is made possible in part by Alpha Natural Resources, an energy company dedicated to respecting the land. Alpha Natural Resources, we power the world through the energy of our people. Haley Buick GMC, the place for a new Verano or Terrain Denali, in Richmond and online at haleybuickgmc.com. Everywhere there are lighting poles, there's one more opportunity to save money. Intelligent Illuminations provides cost-effective wireless lighting solutions for roadway or area outdoor lights. Kanawha Valley Arena, Virginia's cowboy town, hosts an array of events from Civil War reenactments to diesel truck pulls. More information online at virginiarodeo.com. The Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of the Virginia business community, working in legislative, regulatory, and political arenas to promote the free enterprise system. Additional support is provided by these sponsors. And by the members of Virginia's public television stations. Thank you.
Welcome to This Week in Richmond, and welcome back to Senator Walter Stosch. We appreciate your being back on This Week in Richmond. Senator Stosch was first elected to the House of Delegates back in 1982, began serving in 83, served in the House till 92, and then moved over to the Senate in 1992. Now President Pro Tem of the Senate, the chair of the Senate Finance Committee, number 3 in seniority in the Senate, and as some of us would say, one of 3 members of the Senate who voted way back in 1986 to try to do something about transportation, and now, this many years later, in 2013, doing something about transportation. So we appreciate your being on. I mentioned transportation, but that you don't need to go there first unless you want to, but tell our viewers about some of the issues that, from your vantage point and the leadership, that were the major issues that you dealt with during this session that's passed.
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me. Clearly, transportation was one of the major issues. It was 27 years in developing what I believe will be a more comprehensive solution, but what had happened over time, and it's hard for those who are in our constituency to understand, but if you have a fixed rate per gallon as your funding mechanism for transportation, which Virginia's had, and if you are successful enough to improve your fuel economy, then in effect you're paying less tax over time. I told someone recently that back in 1986, I think it was, I believe I had an old Pontiac automobile that got 10 miles to the gallon. So when I was driving 10 miles, I was paying 17.5 cents for using the roads. And now if I can't drive 25 miles and pay that 17.5 cents, I don't think I'm getting appropriate economy. So that flat rate mechanism caused us to have to take another look at how can we generate the revenue that's needed for transportation. So that's what we wrestle with several times in the last 10 years, attempting to resolve it with all kinds of mechanisms, including tolls. But in reality, it had to take a giant step and a support of the governor, of the House of Delegates, as well as the Senate, to reach the final resolution we reached. It will, in effect, result in eliminating the gasoline tax per gallon, but it substitutes a percentage at the wholesale. So there is a reduction in the tax rate, effective rate per gallon, but then that's augmented by expanding the sales tax. So overall, there's about $400 million of additional revenue raised in the 2018 year that will help support transportation on a statewide basis. And then both Hampton Roads and Northern Virginia will have plans for their regions only where they will raise additional funds, and those funds will be used only in those regions for transportation.
You know, you and I both blessed to have grandchildren. I was thinking about that 3.5% tax on the wholesale level. By the time our grandchildren are our ages, or not even our age, who knows what gas may be costing. And so if people are still using gasoline for vehicles, then at least that won't be the fixed rate as you're talking about, that 17.5 cents. Because I mean, if 20 years from now gas is $5 a gallon or whatever, then that percentage will produce a little bit more revenue.
Well, hopefully their taxes will remain fairly stable, but the purchasing power will track the cost of the fuel. But as we get more fuel-efficient vehicles, and we're continuing to do that, we'll be using even less gasoline. So I think the hope is that we will maintain stability, not necessarily increase taxes, but maintain stability in the revenue.
And who knows what other fuel systems will be used by the time some of those grandchildren are 30 and 40 and 50 years old, that will be using, and more hybrids and more electric, and what else somebody else is going to invent out there. But whatever it is, if it's a vehicle going across asphalt or concrete, it's going to need some revenue to keep those.
Well, if we use the roads, there has to be some mechanism in place for all of us to share in that cost. There's some belief that not too distant future we'll have a way of measuring mileage, so that instead of paying based on gasoline consumed, we'll be paying based on the mileage of road use. So all of those are prospective.
Right. But the length of time it took to get this done, it was certainly time.
Right. Well, there's a good deal of misinformation out there. I've heard numbers like $6 billion tax increase, things like that. It's really about an $800 million additional funding for transportation each year beginning in 2018. And about $200 million of that comes from other budget cuts. We have actually using general funds. So then we've found a solution that most of my constituents told me they were interested in. They wanted to have a nexus to fuel. They wanted to have a broader base participation of people who use the roads. And they felt like that transportation was so important, it should have a priority out of the general fund. So all of those were part of the solution.
You know, I think don't remember exactly when or where I heard you say it, but while it wasn't done to create jobs, this additional revenue for roads for transportation does create jobs, and it will be helping firms that are employing people to do this work.
Well, as you note, that was not the purpose of the bill, but clearly among the most depressed industries in the last 15 or 20 years have been asphalt people, contractors, others, people who build roads, and that industry will be stimulated once again because the funding will be there to help do the maintenance and to help do the new construction.
You know, in the waning days of the session, as a conference was appointed from both chambers to work on this, I want you to know that you've certainly received kudos from folks in the other chamber, and even one in the other party in the other chamber, who said that you were the calming influence in that conference committee that helped keep that on track and got something worked out.
Well, I fancied my role as being a mediator, I suppose, of bringing people together, trying to keep them talking. And if you can keep people talking and working together and moving away from their lines in the sand, then oftentimes you can reach a resolution. And we were fortunate to do that this time.
And that's been the approach as we've observed, and you're being chair of the Senate Finance Committee too, on other budget matters too, is to keep people talking.
Well, keep in mind politically we have 20 members, 20 Republicans and 20 Democrats in the Senate. So if for no other reason, we have to figure out a way to work together, because we have divided attitudes about how to not only solve problems, but in many cases defining what the problems are. So working together, collaboration, compromise, all of those are things some of our partisan supporters think ill of us for doing, but you have to do that in order to get things done.
And those who observe as much as we hope that citizens observe realize that when it comes, say, to a matter of a budget, that 20 votes with a tie broken by the lieutenant governor doesn't work, because the lieutenant governor cannot break that tie.
That's correct. The candidates who are running for lieutenant governor today would have you believe they have far more influence in public policy than they truly do. And certainly among the more important bills, the spending, taxation, debt, all of those, our Constitution says that they can only be voted upon by members elected. In other words, you have to be an elected member of the Senate. And of course, the lieutenant governor is not considered an elected member. So when we had to work our compromise on the budget, we had to ignore the fact that we may have a 41st vote because the lieutenant governor cannot break a tie on those bills.
Yes. For those few or whatever number who think that one should never compromise, then to take that point of view, I guess you'd never get a budget. If you had a partisan split and you weren't able to cross the line somewhat, there'd be no budget.
Well, you would hope that regional interest and logic would prevail. Sometimes politics will hold up the budget. It occurred once back in 2000. We had to go into extra session. And then in 2012, my friends on the Democrat side did hold up our budget in exchange for other things and negotiating for other matters. But we have no choice but to balance our budget, and we have no choice but to pass a budget because so much of our local funding for schools and health care and all the other services that government provides is dependent on that state budget.
One of the issues that was in the budget, and you'll be working on along with your colleagues, is the matter of whether Medicaid is expanded. Explain to the viewers how that process is set up and how you see it moving forward.
Well, we have a national health care law now that occurred as a result of the elections in last November. So there's no question that we have to have a response of some sort to the federal mandate. So the question is, how does the state respond? At one time, we thought we would lose all of our Medicaid funding unless we agreed under that duress to expand Medicaid coverage to all of those who were otherwise not covered. The Supreme Court ruled that that's not the case, that the states now have the choice of expanding to the lower income, uncovered families. And that's what we're looking at. I think all of us would like to see everyone receive quality health care. The problem with the national mandate that we often refer to as Obamacare is that it will cost our citizens about $26 billion, these are Virginia residents and businesses, over the next 9 years. And without any expansion, we'll get none of that back. So it'll be all outflow without expansion. On the other hand, if we agree to expand, the out-year costs are so dramatic that we're not sure how we can afford them. So we have a very difficult dilemma on our hands. Do we expand or do we not expand? We passed an amendment to the state budget that said we will not expand unless we are able to secure meaningful reforms in the existing program. We know there's waste, we know there's fraud, we know there's abuse, but we also know that it's a very important program for a lot of disabled and other individuals. So our hope is that we can negotiate with the federal government and secure significant reforms in the program in exchange for any expansion. So we appointed a commission, 4 members of the Senate Finance Committee, 4 members of the House Appropriations Committee, And then the chair of those two committees, Delegate Putney, and in my case, the chair of the Finance Committee, we are members as well, or we can choose a designate. Delegate Putney has chosen someone to serve in his stead. I've chosen to serve on that commission. So we will be meeting in June and taking a look at what can we negotiate with the federal government to allow us to move forward with expansion if that's the goal, but at the same time not be assuming a unsustainable financial commitment in the future. It's very complicated. Our teaching hospitals, for example, are now underwriting the cost of indigent care by people who show up in the emergency rooms. That would be theoretically covered by expansion. Ironically, those who are in our prisons that are now being paid for by the state may be covered by the expansion. So there are some advantages to looking at expansion, but the real concern is the cost in the out years.
So some of the reforms could relate to the out years too, you're thinking?
They would have to in order to make the
Right.
to make the expansion feasible.
Right. So you have 12, 13 months, or you have the months leading up to the next session, and since that's in the budget, it would be law until next June 30th of
Correct.
2014. So
Correct. The law comes, you have to implement it by January the 1st of 2014. January will be back in session, so hopefully this commission will have at least a recommendation to the next session of the General Assembly.
Mm-hmm.
Although it is empowered to move forward with expansion, the likelihood of doing that before the next session is remote.
And since you have this commission set up, then does it make it primarily a legislative decision rather than, of course, the current governor has stated his position. We don't know who the next governor is and what his position would be. So is it, I guess going back to my question, it looks like it's sort of a legislative decision then for the most part.
The budget empowers this commission to negotiate reforms as a precondition of expansion.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have a wonderful leader in the state government in healthcare, Dr. Hazel, who is Secretary of Health and Human Services. And he's a physician by profession, but also a very knowledgeable person. And he's already begun the process of negotiating with the federal government. He understands managed care and all those things that are components, but we simply cannot afford to implement the program in Virginia without these reforms.
Well, that's going to be some important meetings and negotiations, and we'd encourage our viewers, as they're interested in this, to know that this is an open meeting that you all will be having here at the General Assembly building or here on Capitol Square somewhere. So
Yes.
I'm sure you'll have people coming to watch and to listen.
Well, we're already beginning to hear from a number of people, particularly those with an expertise in how the existing Medicaid program works and how it could work better. So those are
good,
ideas
good.
that we are actively soliciting.
Excellent, excellent. So if any of our viewers haven't contacted, they should do that.
Yes, they should.
They certainly should. What other issues, as you think about these coming months, those of you in the Senate are not up for election this year, so you have full ability to be planning for another session. What do you see some of the major issues that you'll be addressing?
Well, I think the tried and true biblical admonition of stewardship is always important. We highly value our role in terms of stewardship of the resources of the Commonwealth. And one of the trusts that we have is how do we look after our young people in the future? And generally that means jobs. So we're very focused on how do we create jobs for our continuing new young people as they enter the job market. And this means all the way back to the education process, as well as making sure Virginia is attractive for companies to locate and expand. So you'll hear a lot about jobs. That is not only because of the youth of our state, but 80% of our general fund comes from either the individual income tax or sales taxes. So it's in the Commonwealth's best interest to encourage jobs as well, because that's what generates the funds to fund education, healthcare, and all the other services. So I would be surprised if you do not hear from both gubernatorial candidates and anyone who's running for public office that their number one priority is business friendliness leading to jobs. Now, beyond that, we obviously have some issues that are related to that, particularly in our education program. We need to turn out better educated young people. We need to figure out a way to match education with where the job opportunities are. So just because we encourage a young person and provide a pathway for a young person to achieve a high school diploma or a college degree or a graduate degree does not mean that that individual is then qualified to earn a living and look after his family. So the alignment of education and job opportunities, in my mind, is important.
So that will be both in the career and technical areas as well as in the, I guess, the traditional higher ed.
It could be, and I'm hoping that people will begin to do, as we do in my CPA profession, a cost-benefit analysis of asking the question, how much am I willing to invest in an education, and where are the payoffs?
Well, that's going to be certainly continuing challenges for parents who oftentimes are the ones helping to foot the bills.
Absolutely.
It certainly will, surely will. Other matters are of course, you in the leadership position on the Joint Legislative Audit and Review Commission and other matters. Senate Finance will be meeting fairly frequently during the summer. So other issues that you'd like to highlight?
Well, the Senate Finance Committee, which I chair, as you know, has a number of subcommittees. We have a subcommittee on education, economic development, natural resources, public safety, transportation. All those subcommittees are conducting hearings and meetings around the state constantly, trying to understand issues, trying to understand how we can play a role. And then all of that will become part of our agenda for next session.
And again, we'd encourage our viewers to go on the General Assembly calendar and look for those meetings. People over in the Eastern Shore had an opportunity, I think, here recently with one of your subcommittees, and so the meetings are not all right here in Richmond. They can be in many different parts of the Commonwealth.
And the important thing is for the viewers to know all of our meetings are open to the public. I mean, every bill that comes before the General Assembly is assigned to a committee, and then any citizen is invited and encouraged to come forward or at least communicate their views on those particular bills. So the Jefferson and Madison and all of our forefathers had it right. It should be an open government, a participatory government.
Right. And as hopefully more and more citizens of the Commonwealth are understanding that the months when you're not in session are some of the best months to be talking to you and their delegates or their own senator about issues when there is time for something to be considered.
In my office, we receive probably 1,000 or more inquiries each week during the session, and even outside of the session, 100 or so each week. So we're happy to hear from our constituents and others who have interest in the legislature and its business.
With your being the chair of Senate Finance, did that increase the number of contacts that you had from outside of your district?
Quite dramatically, because they view us as having more insight and influence over the budget. And so many people are interested in the budget, not because of it's an exciting document, but because of the impact that it has on so many services that are provided. So we do get a lot of inquiries.
Yes. Senator Stosch, we very much appreciate your being on This Week in Richmond, informing our viewers and We look forward to having you back and talking with you some more.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you.
This Week in Richmond is made possible in part by Alpha Natural Resources, an energy company dedicated to respecting the land. Alpha Natural Resources, we power the world through the energy of our people. Haley Buick GMC, the place for a new Verano or Terrain Denali, in Richmond and online at haleybuickgmc.com. Everywhere there are lighting poles, there's one more opportunity to save money. Intelligent Illuminations provides cost-effective wireless lighting solutions for roadway or area outdoor lights. Kanawha Valley Arena, Virginia's cowboy town, hosts an array of events from Civil War reenactments to diesel truck pulls. More information online at virginiarodeo.com. The Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of the Virginia business community, working in legislative, regulatory, and political arenas to promote the free enterprise system. Additional support is provided by these sponsors. And by the members of Virginia's public television stations. Thank you.